Hey guys, welcome back. I'm going on a short vacation tomorrow, so I wanted to film this video beforehand. You're not going to know that because I'll edit it and post it when I get back, so you'll just watch it on YouTube like any other video. But I just wanted to get this filmed this evening, and this was a cool find I got from Norwest Airsoft the other day. Check out Norwest Airsoft. They're one of the few places you can grab anything airsoft-wise in Spokane area. So if you're in the area, definitely check them out. Or if you're online, check him out as well. He's got a website. So I grabbed this there for a pretty good price. It was pretty much new. I did notice a little bit of damage on one of the connectors, but this being pretty old and long out of production, not a big deal to me, and it's minor wear to me. So yeah, I thought this was a great time to check this out because I just talked about in a recent video some of my first airsoft experiences, and this being from that era, I figure why not check it out. So this is a Systema complete gearbox. You just can't get these anymore hardly. They're fairly tough to find. I saw them online for upwards of like 240 bucks. They are pricey little things. So this is the version 2 for the M4A1 with an M120 spring and a torque up spur gear. So I wanted to open this up, see what all is in it, see what the tuning is like, and kind of compare it to some things nowadays and how I might tune it. First of all, let's check out the externals on this. I really love the Systema logo on here. Honestly, it looks much better than most of just the painted on logos you see on gearboxes nowadays. This is a 7mm bearing gearbox. That's kind of neat. 7mm was kind of the thing back then. You know, 6mm was standard, 7 was like an upgrade, 8 was like unheard of at that time. What's really neat about this is it takes actually a 2.5mm Allen key for all the screws here, but I found that you can also use a T10 Torx bit. Either work fairly well. And I will note that this particular one, this normally comes with two female like motor pins on the front. One was missing the heat shrink and the other was just broken off, so that's just an effect of old age. It's probably been taken out of the package a few times here, I would imagine. But it's still got the metal contact on the left side here for the selector plate. And it looks like it has a ported cylinder. You can see the port here. It's barely visible on the outside, so it's interesting that it's not lined up or anything. All right, let's open this up. Hopefully it doesn't take too much force, and it looks like it opened up pretty easily. Looks like the tappet was pulled back just a little bit there. Dang, that is a greasy thing there. Interesting. I kind of wonder if this has been opened up before. Honestly, I have no idea if this is the original grease or shimming or anything, but we're gonna check it out all the same and treat it as such. Let's talk about the spring and spring guide here. I like Systema springs pretty well. This is a hefty spring. I had one a long time ago like do a serious bend on me. It just almost broke in half actually. So they're reasonably good quality. Unfortunately, anything Systema nowadays is just, it doesn't really exist anymore. You can't get them. They're very tough to find. And parts have evolved a decent amount. So Systema, like you're gonna see here, uses some older designs. Things have changed and things have gotten better. So not a bad spring. They made decent springs. Their spring guides are a mixed bag. They have a metal base, but a plastic shaft. And of course they have good bearings. I've had one or two of these plastic shaft ones crack on me. If these had a metal one, it'd be like best spring guide in the world. But just because of the plastic shaft, these are like a kind of a B- C+ to me. All right, let's check out the cylinder assembly here. Oof, so much grease, oh my gosh. I am pretty sure this is all the factory grease, but everything is heavily lubricated. Does it have a good air seal? It's okay. It's not amazing, but then again, this has probably been sitting for 10 or 15 years. It's hard to say. It seems like it's a leak at the piston head. Just needed a little bit of... It's a pretty good air seal once you kind of get it broken in a little bit there after sitting for a long time. Even with the nozzle, actually, it's still perfect. That's a great air seal. I really like that. They did a good job on that, but that's partially from all this blasted grease. Oh my gosh. So let's look at all these components internally here after I clean my hands off a little bit. Gosh. So I do like the ribbed cylinders. I really like these. Nice Teflon setup. The cylinder heads on these rock in. They have one O-ring. They seal well enough to do the job. Nowadays, a lot of things have 2 O-rings, which is nice, but it's not necessary. Looks like this has just been kind of indented from the piston head from like over time. It looks like from the grease. Yeah, there we go. So it is built to fit the silent piston head here, which I like this design. It actually helps with angle of engagement a little bit most of the time. And I like these cylinder heads, but they are heavy, and that is kind of the downside of them. The lighter, the better. And now modern day ones are made of aluminum, whereas I believe this one is brass, if I'm not mistaken. If I'm wrong there, then great. I don't know my metals as well as I should. But these are good. They're very durable. I had one break on me a long time ago where the nozzle there just snapped right off. So they're good. They're dampers, or they're the rubber. It's just plain old rubber. There's not a whole lot there. So this is like kind of a B to me. They're not the best, but they're definitely not the worst by any means. The nozzle has an O-ring up in there. These haven't changed a whole lot in a long time, so these are great. Like them. The tappet is reasonably flexible. That gets like a good A in my book. Degrease my hands again here. Piston head is, some people call these mushroom ones. They're technically silent piston heads is what they're called, but I mean, they're not silent. Nothing's terribly silent in an airsoft gun. But these are good. They're pretty lightweight. This is a polymer one. I know nowadays you can get metal ones that are a little more durable, but they're obviously heavier. This is just the Systema standard piston. I like their red pistons personally, that had the speed cuts in them. I'm not sure if those were later designs or when those came into play. This one does not have the second last tooth removed. Way back when this came out, that wasn't really a thing, and this was just how pistons kind of were at the time. So, I mean, these haven't changed a whole lot. This is a really basic piston. They're fine material. I can't really say anything bad about them. They're just plain. The one metal tooth on there, so again, really normal design for that period, and these work fine. Nowadays, I'd probably shave that second to last tooth off, and the AOE is probably okay. The grease on here is awful. It's really everywhere and awful. I'm going to maintain the shimming so I can check it here in a second, but I'm not sure about the shimming. I have a feeling it's good, but I've actually never checked out a Systema gearbox and their shimming before, so it could be terrible for all I know. But these older gearboxes, they kind of use that almost like VFC design as far as like the reinforcement. I kind of put this in the same league. Actually, it might even be the same metal that VFC uses in their gearbox shells. I'm honestly not 100% sure. These are good. I've actually never used a Systema gearbox shell before. I've heard they're kind of average. I guess we'll find out. Maybe I'll put this in a gun here soon enough. The 7mm bearings here. Being an older bearing design, I'd imagine they're all right. I wouldn't run them on super heavy springs for sure, maybe like M110 or at most. This having an M120 in it, I might just throw some solid one in here or just run it as is. It's hard to say. Like, I've had newer bearings that have lasted a long time, but older design bearings like this, it's hard to say, and it just depends on the spring you put them on and how much wear and tear you put through them. Now let's check out all the mechanics here. The selector switch, I actually like Systema ones. They're decent. They're definitely not the best in the world. I give them like kind of a B-, B, somewhere in there in that grading range. To me, they're kind of like your stock trigger switch, maybe a hair nicer than those. Not much. A lot of grease on that trigger for some reason. That's really just weird. Low resistance wiring. I do like this stuff a lot, and I think they do a pretty good job on their connector here. I like the heat shrink they use, but really nothing super special in the wiring. I know way back when low resistance wiring like this was kind of a great new thing, like really big deal, at least as far as I recall. Nowadays, I feel like so many guns come with it, and it's not a big deal anymore. It's cool, and I feel it's kind of flashy, but doesn't really go a whole lot of ways. Wow, that's great English. It really doesn't matter a whole lot. I do like Systema gear sets. I've used 7, 8 of them ever. I've used helical ones, I've used torque up ones, I've used speed ones, I've used standard ones. I like them. They seem to be fairly durable, but I've had 2 of the 7 or 8 gear sets I've had from Systema fail on me. One was a helical gear set, and that only failed because It's kind of new. It was in the early days of my tuning guns, and I used 6mm bearings, which is like a no-no, and the bearing failed on this sector gear here, and that was that. It ripped a couple of teeth off that gear, and that's all she wrote. The other one was just regular wear and tear. I think it was the spur gear that lost a tooth, if I recall. So, you know, it happens to all gear sets out there in some point in time, but that one I probably got maybe 50,000 rounds out of before it failed, so I can't really complain. Let's put it back together and I'll check the shimming here. As far as how tight it is, it's not bad. The bevel gear here is way too loose. It's got a lot of play to it there, actually, so that needs to be worked on. I mean, technically you don't have to put shims on the bottom as long as the motor pushes it up, but for completionist's sake and perfectionism for that matter, I like to get everything shimmed as well as possible and not rely on other things to keep things in place. The spur gear, probably use a little bit of refinement there as far as height goes. It is close but not quite there, and that's the same with the sector gear. It's got about maybe a hair less play, but it's still got a little bit of play there. So it's not bad. It sounds actually rather good spinning it, but remember this is lubricated with that pretty hefty lube. I'm definitely going to tune it a little bit, but it's really not bad. It's definitely better than some even current airsoft guns you can get stock nowadays. Like you could get a G&G combat machine, for instance, even a brand new one out of the box that was produced this year, and their shimming is just like, ugh, it's not good. It's way too loose. Sure, the height between the gears is acceptable, but they've used like the same shims no matter what gearbox, because every single gearbox is probably, you know, just a minute hair different as far as tolerances. So things can change, and you know, this is how it goes. But this isn't bad. I give this like a B as far as shimming goes. It definitely could be better, but it's really fairly good for a stock gearbox as far as shimming. This does have a torque up spur gear, which is nice. So that's great for that 120 spring. You know, way back when torque motors weren't terribly abundant, I feel like, so having a higher ratio gear set for more torque definitely helped. I'll tell you though, just so much grease here really bugs the living heck out of me. So this is going to get a good cleaning before I even think about putting it in an airsoft gun. And I'm really tempted to put this in a G3, just because, you know, a nice classic Army G3 with a complete system of gearbox in it. Some serious nostalgia right there. It's one of the things I wanted, you know, 10 plus years ago when I was airsofting. Like, oh man, this is the coolest stuff in the world. Full Systema, best thing you can get, relatively speaking. But overall, I think this is a reasonably good gearbox. Those high price tags you might see on overseas websites, and like in the UK or China, if you can still find those over there, are way too much. You can get complete airsoft guns for a lot less money with gearboxes that are just as good, if not slightly better than this. So this 10 or 15 years ago, when this was really a thing and still you could easily get this on an airsoft website, back then was reasonably good, I feel like. But nowadays, I think things have changed a lot. A lot of airsoft companies are shimming their guns better. We're not really seeing 7mm bearings out there hardly at all. The gears, I think, are still on par with anything nowadays, because I like these gears. Even if I've had one or two fail, I really like them. They sound good, they're easy to shim, and they tend to be fairly durable. Gearbox shell is on par. The compression system was still really good. So, you know, to me, this is like a B+, A- gearbox. Even nowadays, it's still pretty good. It can just use a little bit of tuning and a little bit of advancement into the future as far as getting rid of that second to last tooth on the piston and not gunking up the whole gearbox with ridiculous amounts of grease here. So solid gearbox, I like it. I'm really glad I picked it up. I'm looking forward to tuning it and probably throwing a couple of different parts in it, and especially a good MOSFET. Thanks for watching, guys. I will catch you guys in the next video in the near future.